So I recently read a book by Sandy Richter on the Old Testament, and it's very, very good. And she starts off talking like, it's like you got a closet, and the whole closet is just a dump of stuff. And it's just there, it dumped in the closet, and because you don't want to look at it, you close the door, and you go on, and you go, I can understand the New Testament, let's leave that one in the closet. And so today, what we're going to try to do is just organize our thoughts, and this is an orientation to the Old Testament day. That's why you got all these charts and things, and I'll show you how that works. So we're just going to try to, put some things in order so our brains can open the doors and not be terrified by what we see inside the Old Testament. So one of the first, I gotta get my pens. Oh, I did. One of the first things I thought you could do is take out this chart that has the books, and I'm going to show you how many of you can recite all the books in the Old Testament in order? Good. I taught that to the kids during the year of COVID when we homeschooled the kids. The objective was to learn all the books of the Bible and 100 verses. We accomplished that. They forgot it all, but we accomplished that. And one of the games was, can you say the Old Testament in one breath?
Wow.
So they had to, and finally they could. They could and say it all in one breath. So it goes like this. It goes, Smith. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges, Ruth, 1 Samuel, 1 Kings, 1 Chronicles, Ezra, Nehemiah, Esther, Job, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Psalms, Solomon, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Lamentations, Ezekiel, Daniel, Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, Micah, Nehemiah, Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi. Okay, then the next assignment was to say it backwards.
Oh,
Now that's a little harder, and you can't do that in one breath because you have to go much slower. I would encourage you, if you are up to it, to memorize your books in order. And this is a huge help in doing that. So I'm going to show you how this works. First of all, it's a little silly game, but and I set it up for the 3rd and 4th grade. I'm not trying to but I set it up. I said you had to learn it as a 5-12, 5-5-12, and a 4-1, 21-1. Okay, so the 5-12, 5-5-12 is your Old Testament. Your 4-1, 21-1 is your New Testament. And that is, you have 5 books of law, 12 books of history, 5 books of poetry, 5 books of major prophets, 5 books of minor prophets. Okay, that's your 5-12, 5-5-12. The New Testament goes, you have 4 Gospels, you have 1 history, that's Acts, you have 21 letters, and you have 1 book of prophecy. So just doing that much broke things down. And then we got to that 21, we divided it in half. 8 of them are by, 13 of them are by Paul, and 8 of them are by others. So it just went Paul and others. And so it made all the pieces smaller, which is a little bit easier to understand. So the law is, well, you see it. I don't need to write it up here. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. And that is called Torah. So Torah is the law. So if you are ever watching The Chosen, or you are ever listening to anything with even the slightest Jewish slant on it, and they say the Torah, that's what they mean. They're talking the books of Moses, which is Genesis through Deuteronomy. So that's pretty simple there to those. And probably all of you can say the first 5. You probably all know that. So the next set is the books of history. And they're right there. They're Joshua through Esther. And basically the timeline ends right there. So this is what this helped me a huge amount because without having this chart as a kid and as a teenager and I'm trying to learn the Old Testament and whatnot, I thought Genesis was going to be at the beginning of the timeline, and that Malachi, and this is actually kind of true, Malachi is at the end of the timeline, that's right, and then everyone was going to go bum 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 like that. And then I discovered what a mess this is, because that's not how it goes. It's not in that kind of order. So my objective today is to show you the time order and how these books fit into your big timeline that you got in your packet. Okay? So that's one of the things I want to do. And it is helpful when you learn the history one. If you are going to memorize history, I would think of it in 3 sections. Here's your history. I would think of it as first 3, Joshua, Judges, and Ruth. And then I would think of it as Samuel, Kings, Chronicles. And then I would think of it as Ezra, Nehemiah, and Esther. So now the list just got smaller. So it's a little bit easier to memorize in this way if you think of it like that. The books of poetry, that's not too hard. Major prophets, not too bad. Minor prophets we'll get to.
Yeah. Are you saying that the history sections of parts of history are individually separated by those ones? Or you're just saying that's a way to memorize
That's
it?
a way to memorize it, but they actually are individually separated by those ones.
Oh, okay.
Okay? Yeah, starting here, this part, Israel is a country that is really a bunch of tribal units that are together but not officially, not as a government organization. They don't have a president, they don't have a king, they have all these different ones and they're all functioning within their tribes and they're cooperating and they're working but they're functioning like that. This one is the, whoops, I can't do this fast. This is the kingdom. Okay, they wanted a king, and this is all, it happens in Samuel, okay, and then this is after the exile. So there's an exile right here, and that's after the exile. So yes, they do kind of divide like that. So it's easy to memorize, but it's also a timeline thing going on there. Poetry and minor prophets. I have a little techniques that I use to remember the minor prophets and where they're prophesying to and whom and whatnot, and I'll explain that when we get to that, but I'm jumping ahead of my story. So now your timeline. If you take your timeline, this was a big help for me originally, and put it like this, because it's too big for one page. Actually, it needed like 10 pages, but you didn't have room to lay it out on the table, each of you. So this is what I did. So it's like this. If you could, if it's taped together, it would work perfect. Okay? So let me show you some of this timeline. Oh, and if I am like way too basic for you, I apologize. I didn't know where to start on this, you know, how much. Don't worry, okay. And also, to try to do the entire Old Testament in 12 weeks is impossible. So I am picking main themes that carry you. So please just, you know, plummet me with your questions, because I may have missed your major question. So you come here for 12 weeks and you have one big question and you didn't even cover it because whatever. So yes, give me your questions. So I'm going to do this is the BC timeline, okay? AD is off the chart over here, and we live, what, over here somewhere, okay? I'm going to take this, there's a lot of information that it makes it really hard to indicate the timeline exactly by years. One thing, prior to here, they functioned with lunar years and not solar years, so those are different, and there's different amount of days in the lunar year than a solar year. So I'm not going to go into that. We're just going to call them years. I think of them as years of 365 days because my brain works like that, but it may be that they're actually 360 days or 361 or whatever's in a lunar year, which I don't know for sure.
So they did, I'm sorry, lunar years and up into the...
I think they broke that when they developed the AD time and the BC time. Currently, they don't even call it that because the people who do history don't want to identify the starting point with Jesus Christ.
Right.
So BC is now BCE, before Common Era, and AD is now CE, Common Era,
Wow.
and instead of what we called before Christ, and what is it, Anno Domino, something like that. It was after the Lord thing is what that is. So it's been changed. I personally don't change it in my head. It's still BC and AD because I want to identify it with Jesus Christ. And actually, this identified, there's an interesting thing about BC and AD time. When they figured out, this one counts backwards, right? This one counts forwards. When you have a mathematical timeline and you go into negatives and you go into positives, I should do it this way for you guys. There's a zero. There's a year zero. There's no year zero in the timeline. They skipped the year zero. So we lost one whole year. Big, that's we're talking about a long time. But I'm just saying there's no year zero. This I'm going to go here. Let's see, halfway in the middle is about here, and halfway here is about here, and halfway here is about here. And this, I'm going to make this 1000 BC, 2000 BC, 3000 BC, and 4000 BC. There's a lot of really, really good Bible-believing, inspirationally, every word is true, scholars that don't count time the way it's actually said in here. And the reason is because that the meanings of their counting of times in their culture is different than our meanings of our counting of times. So I can't, but I'm not smart enough to figure that out. So if you go and you say, this is Adam, I saw see the little cute picture? That's Adam. Okay? This is Abraham. He's actually right about here. And this is David. He's a little bit before that. These are very, very approximate dates, not exact dates. Otherwise, I'd be giving you, 1,272 or whatever, So these are just very approximate dates. But they don't always, if you count, when it says that, when Adam was 120 years old, Seth was born. Okay, when Seth was whatever years old, his son was born, and on and on and on and on. You add those up, not their total ages, just how old they were when each, and you come up with approximately 4000 BC for Adam. Okay? Once you get to Abraham, you can actually date him by outside Bible sources. You can't date these because right about here, there's a flood. This was at about 24, right there, okay? So this is Noah, this is Abraham, and Moses is going to be about right here. This is going to be 1400. And Jeremiah is going to hit about right here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Those are our 6 main landmark people. We're going to organize our thoughts around the Old Testament around these 6 people. So we have Adam, Noah, Abraham, Moses, David, Jeremiah. I'm sure you know something about all those guys. So those are all familiar names. And you kind of get them in their right spots and you know, okay, well, Solomon is after David, so you were going to, in your brain, in your messed up closet, you're going to put Solomon there. You know, you're going to say, well, Daniel happens right about the time of Jeremiah, so you're going to put him right here. You're going to say, well, Joseph is after Abraham but before Moses, so he's going to go in here somewhere, right? So that helps me, this helped me to like figure out how to put things in order. And that was my plan for that. So, and those are the approximate dates of those guys, and we will be adding more into that. But before I go into how the books fit into this line, I want to show you your map. Okay, so I brought this map, and you have I brought you 2 maps. I brought you an Old Testament Middle East map of the whole area. I also brought you a current map because so much is going on in the exact same territory that it's kind of helpful for me to go, oh, okay, that's Jordan. And, you know, what used to be Moab is now Jordan. What used to be below the Fertile Crescent is Saudi Arabia and things like that. So I can kind of like think correctly. So one thing I want you to see, and I hope they can, can't see me. All right. Oh, well. There's 3 main areas in this map that we're going to think about as far as Old Testament history goes. Israel is right here. It's this tiny little spot right there. You can usually see it with the Dead Sea, the river, and the Sea of Galilee. This little picture that goes like this. Okay, see that? That's your key. You're at Israel. Right? That's your Dead Sea, Jordan River, and Sea of Galilee. Whenever you find that, that's where you know Israel is at. This right here, from here, this orange area, and I think it's green on yours, that's called the Fertile Crescent. The Fertile Crescent is the huge pathway from the Tigris and Euphrates up over this hill and down into Masada Hill, up over this arch and down into the Israel area. That's called the Fertile Crescent. It's a fertile area.
Is that Old Testament reference or today?
It's still like that today, but that's Old Testament. I don't know if they still call it the Fertile Crescent. I do not know, Pam, maybe they have learned how to irrigate this desert. I haven't checked out current geography so much, so that might be. But you could not walk across. So if you wanted to get from Euphrates River to Israel, that way was not the way to go. You would die. That would be like crossing the Sahara Desert for 3 weeks. And what kind of supply, without, water stations, So they did not go that way. So travel was over the top like this. And there's huge major kingdoms that lived in this area. The first major kingdom is Assyria. And it's up here. The other major kingdom, empire is Egypt. And Assyria, this whole area here, this is called Mesopotamia. This Babylon is going to take over Assyria eventually, but this is the Babylon, Assyria area. This is the Egypt area. These are the two superpowers of the ancient world. And these guys are vying to get these guys. These guys are fighting to get these guys. And Israel is in the middle.
Right.
Okay? So, I was thinking, I asked God lots of questions. I say, okay, why did you pick Israel as the promised land? Because it is the joining spot between these two major powers, which means that's the location for war. It's the location for commerce, but it's also the location for war, because whoever controlled that passage controlled the other group. Because that was the big thing, was who controlled that passage, and that's what God gave to Israel. I'm going, whoa, are you setting them up for, you know? And then, we're going to find out that that is a problem, but there's also a provision for that. And so why, God? And it dawned on me, Israel was not planned out to be a missionary nation. Their job was not to go out to the other nations. Their job was to be them and worship their God and to be a light on the hill. And they were supposed to evangelize the other nations, but they weren't supposed to go out so much. So he made it so that they would be coming in. They are coming in from this side. They are coming in from this side. Later on, they're going to be coming in from Greece with Alexander the Great. And they're going to be coming in because he's decided he's going to take over Egypt. How's he going to get there? He's going to send ships, but he's mostly going to send his land. And to do that, everybody has to go through Israel. So if they are following the Lord their God and they are worshiping Him and they are obeying Him and loving Him with all their heart and their soul and their mind and their strength, then they are a city set on a hill, a light to the Gentiles. And I thought, what a strategically important position God chose for Israel. And to this day, Israel is the strategic position. You can tell they are constantly fighting. And Israel holds 10% of what they used to have, if that. And still, they are the strategic position, and will be up until through the end times. Yeah, Battle of Armageddon, all that. And that one completely side note. One of the coolest things, is Martha in the room? One of the coolest things was to stand on this ledge with Martha and look out at the valley that will be Armageddon.
Yeah.
You look down there and you see where Gideon fought his battle. You look over there and you can see Nazareth on the hill. You can look up there and there's Mount Hermon where Elijah did his fire down. And I'm just picturing all these stories, for me that was like, and then there's other stories. There's this little valley right here that's a thing between two mountains, two hills, and that's where Pharaoh tried to come up, and he got. I was just like, I am looking at history. It was just, and future history. I was just blown away. It was such a cool thing. That's completely off. So that's our maps. We are going to have them coming in from the top. We're going to have always, these guys are going to come in from the top. These guys are going to come in from the bottom, and they are trying to get to here to conquer them. And that's what the Battle of Carchemish is. Anybody heard about the Battle of Carchemish? Okay, well, that's one of those. Assyria and Babylon is going to go down here, try to wipe out the pharaohs. And all that's going to happen and it's all going right through Jerusalem. Right through Israel and Judah. And if they are following when they are, let me put it this way, when they are following the Lord, they have the most unreal, miraculous, unable to be explained militarily in any way, protection that happens to them.
Yeah.
And when they are not following the Lord, they have the most devastating results. And it's it's
Right.
cut and dry.
Extremes.
It is. They really don't have a, well, that's right, it all turned out okay. And it's never really down the center. It's one or the other. So I wanted to take this book on this chart on the books, where is it? And feed it into this timeline so that you get a clue. So I'm going to change colors. First one I want you to see is half of your timeline. Half of it is Genesis. And that, I knew that, but to see it in the chart, half of the timeline is Genesis.
What number does it go?
It goes to 2000.
So it's the whole first page.
It's the whole first page is Genesis. And there's only 6 verses. Well, first 3 verses take place right here. Genesis 1 through 3, right? In the garden. So by the time you get to first 3 verses, first 3 chapters.
Yes.
Yes, I said that right. By the time you get to chapter 4, you're dealing with a story at the moment. And that's probably 100 years after they leave the garden. I kind of think they start counting time from the day they sinned, not the day he was created. Because first of all, Adam wasn't born. He doesn't have a birthday. He has a creation day, and he's created with age. I don't know what age he is, but he was never a child. He's created with age. And that right there sets the precedent for all kinds of scientific questions. Because if Adam can be created with age, then the world can be created with age. And the stars can be created with age. And they go, no, it's 5 billion years old. I go, well, maybe not. It could have been created with age. Because Adam was created with age. In order to throw out, no, it can't be. It had to be this slow progression. They have to also throw out Adam. Because he was created with age. So that, to me, when I did learn that, I go, okay, that takes a whole lot of pressure off as far as trying to understand. And I mean, it's in almost every commercial. It's almost everything that you ever see is, 10 billion years ago we did da-da-da-da-da. And it's everywhere. And the stars, those stars have to be that many, because they're dying. Well, maybe they were created right like that, So this answered a whole lot of questions, just that Adam was created with age.
Wow.
And then, so chapter 4 is going to be about right here. And I want you to know this is chapter 6. It just gives some perspective, When chapter 5 is a list of who had who had what kids and whatnot. And so this is all chapter 5. And there's another interesting thing, that Adam lived nearly 1,000 years. So let's put Adam like this. Okay? He lives nearly 1,000 years. Noah is 600 years old when the flood comes, which means Noah is born right there. You realize that Noah, as a little kid, could have said, hey, Dad, tell me about Adam.
Wow. Right?
And his dad said, oh, I knew Adam. It just doesn't, it's like, that doesn't even cross our minds. That it's that, when they talk about the stories being carried on, well, there's such a huge overlap his son goes to here, you know, and somewhere in here, right around in here somewhere is Enoch. He's the guy who goes to heaven without dying, right? If you want to read more about Enoch, it's funny. Enoch's, most of his information is in Jude, second to last book of the New Testament. I thought that was, I don't know why I just thought, whoa, what's he doing in Jude, you know? But he's in Jude. So there's this huge thing. It's kind of interesting when you kind of get a visual picture of how these people's lives overlapped. Methuselah, the guy who lived to be the oldest man ever was, he died right at the flood. Okay? His last day was right at the flood. Or, maybe his last day was a week before the flood, or a month before the flood, but he was right at the flood when he died. So, he is Noah's grandfather, I think, if I'm remembering the genealogy really correctly. Anyway, Genesis covers all this. Now, between Abraham and the flood, we've got Noah, we've got Tower of Babel. The flood takes us through chapter 9. Noah's story goes through chapter 9. Abraham is going to start at the end of 11. So this huge section here is just 10 and half of 11. And the Tower of Babel is in there. To me it was impactful how much time is in this little bit of space in the book of Genesis. Because starting here to here is 38 chapters of Genesis is in here, and we've only got 12 chapters of Genesis to there. You see the difference there?
So where does 38 start?
Oh, well, Abraham is in chapter 12, and by the time we get to 2000, we're in 50, at chapter 50. So from chapters 12 to 50
Oh, so.
is right in here. See how short a time that is compared to the other?
Okay.
Okay, I'm just giving you a frame of reference for how things are going. So as of Abraham, we're going to start hearing Abraham's story and Isaac's story and Jacob's story and Joseph's story. So no longer is it this long spread out thing. It's combined. And you get all kinds of information in that time right there. So before I pick up any more, you guys ready for a break? Have I messed with you too much already? I have to keep going or you'll forget. I don't know. You ready for a break?
I am.
Okay. All right, let's take a break. And if you saw the overall plan, today's just orientation. I will go back and deal with creation and Abraham and each of these things. Oh, one thing real quick. One reason these 6 men are chosen is because they are the primary covenants of the Old Testament. They are the primary covenant receivers of the Old Testament. The Old Testament has all kinds of covenants in it, but these are the primary covenants, and these lead the story of redemption. The story of redemption unfolds through these covenants. And when I finally put that together, then I thought, oh, okay, now the stories are producing an end result. And that is what my main theme is on this whole series. So of the 6 up here, Adam, Noah, Abraham, Moses, David, and Jeremiah, Adam is the only one that doesn't actually have the word covenant attached to him. But so many people consider it the Adamic covenant that I went ahead and went with it. But Noah has an actual covenant with the word covenant attached to the statement from God. And so does Abraham, and so does Moses, and so does David, and so does Jeremiah. So these are the line of the covenants. So there are other ones, I'll point out the other covenants as we go. There's a major covenant with Phineas. You guys know him? Okay, well there's a major covenant with Phineas, and there's a few others. There's some good examples. That will be on Covenant Day, which is lesson 4. We'll do some of those. I'll explain to you how the covenant worked and how all the details that it entailed. But so we need to go on to Exodus. Oh, Janet said, if you have a chronological Bible, that really helps. I have a chronological Bible, and they take it from Genesis and they put in order these stories. So you might be halfway through 1 Samuel, and all of a sudden you get a bunch of Psalms, because David wrote those Psalms, and he is in 1 Samuel. And you get into 1 Kings, you're going to have Proverbs, because 1 Kings starts with Solomon, and you're going to have Proverbs, and that helps if you ever get a chronological Bible. That's a good way to kind of figure this out if you want the storyline and how that all works. Okay, so Exodus, between Genesis and Exodus is a 400-year break. So there's 400 years of silence between Genesis and Exodus, because Exodus will start here. So there's 400 years in here. There's going to be another 400 years here, after Malachi, before Jesus. So here's a 400-year break. And then we have Exodus.
What year are you putting that?
I'm putting that at approximately 1400. I actually think the Exodus took place at 1440, and then they spent 40 years in the wilderness, so 1400 is when they enter the Promised Land. But just to get more rounded off numbers, I put the Exodus right there. I'll tell you why when I get there that I think that's the right date for, or like within a couple years of the right date of the Exodus. There's controversy over that, and I can give you both sides of that. So there's also controversy over which was the path of the Exodus. I can give you that too, but that's we're not on Exodus. I'm just showing you where Exodus is. All right. Moses was 80 years old when if I put the little green, that's too close, but if I put the little green dot in, that would be the parting of the Red Sea, because there's 40 years in the wilderness before they get into the Promised Land. So Exodus is actually right here. And Moses is 80 years old when that happens, so he's born back here. He's born during the time of slavery. That's why they had to hide his body, his baby, and hide him as a baby in the basket, because he's born during slavery, and that was the time when they made the Pharaoh made the rule that all baby boys needed to die. And there's so we'll get into that before I get off track. Okay, so Numbers is right here with it. I'm using up too much space, so I'm going to put Numbers right here. For the moment, I'm going to skip Deuteronomy and Leviticus. Leviticus and Deuteronomy are not storyline. I'm going to give you storyline right now. This is timeline chronology. Leviticus and Deuteronomy are simultaneous. So if I can squish it in there, what I want to do is give you in green, going across, is timeline part of the story. And in black, going down, are the extra pieces of the story added in. So if you read through and you're reading through and you actually do succeed in reading through Leviticus without
Without like,
I've always wanted to do a study on Leviticus because there's all kinds of valuable stuff in there, but it's not particularly obvious to the watch, to the reading of it. And they killed him and they sprinkled the blood here and they did that to here and this and that. Yes. But anyway, so, and Deuteronomy is a fascinating book that I will spend some time on Deuteronomy. So, okay, so then right here, all right, at this point we finished the Torah. We finished the law. You see that? We finished the first section. We're ready to start section 2, the history section. That's going to take us all the way to here. So the rest of this section, this was all Torah. This is the history. It's going to take us to here, which is the last thing, which is going to be Nehemiah. Whoops, I have to do him this way. So you don't need to put him in yet. I'm just giving you a frame of reference there. So the next one's Joshua. And Judges. Okay, Ruth is an extra story put in there. Ruth takes place during the time of Judges. So hers is like, oh, I'm telling you this timeline story, but right in the middle of this timeline is a special little fun thing about Ruth. Let me tell you about Ruth. So there's like a sidetrack on to Ruth. Ruth is down here. You understand? Does that make sense? I'm trying to do the ongoing timeline, and then Ruth is stuck in there, because that's a special story about one person down here. All right, then we have 1st and 2nd Samuel. Actually, let me change this. Judges goes way through this. And we have 1st and 2nd Samuel over here. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I'm doing it without my notes, and Judges is a 350-year period, and which means Ruth fits over here.
so Judges
Judges is like from here to here,
okay. Which is,
going to be,
so we're after Deuteronomy
we're after Joshua,
and
and then Judges, and it's a 350-year period.
Wait,
Still before David.
no. So David, where's David again?
David's right here.
Okay, so David, so there, we have such a,
What's going to be really hard is the rest of the Old Testament
Goes here.
goes there.
okay, so,
So when we actually get to David on our study, I might give you like an expanded timeline of just that.
That would be
So we can
great.
go like this. So I'm trying to give just the big picture today. Okay? So.
we're trying to be perfectionists.
Yeah. All right, so here we're going to go, 1st and 2nd Kings is going to take us from David to Jeremiah. Okay? 1st and 2nd Chronicles. 1st Chronicles is David's story. 2nd Chronicles is this one. Again. So this is a repeat. So if you're reading the story straight through, you could skip 1st and 2nd Chronicles and go from Kings to Ezra. Okay?
It's sort of
It's a retelling
Telling
of the story,
Okay,
yes.
Okay.
And so me being one who goes, God, why'd you do that? The First and Second Kings storyline is mostly political. Like, who's in charge, who's the king, who's attacking, what country's doing what, da-da-da-da-da, like that. It's mostly like that. And First and Second Chronicles is mostly the spiritual side of the same story. So what are the priests doing? How many idols do they have going? Who's worshiping, who's not? Did they celebrate Passover? Did they not celebrate Passover? All that stuff. So that's more or less the spiritual line of the story. There's another thing in that as of David, after David, this is going to split into two kingdoms, which I should have done on your map, but I didn't. And it's only going to go to maybe here. And this is going to be the storyline of the northern kingdom. And this right here will be the storyline of the southern kingdom. And as you read First and Second Kings, it's going to jump back and forth. Bamba, 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 bamba. And it's going to say, when Ahaz became king when Jeroboam had ruled for 3 years. So all your timelines are like, okay, he's been ruling for 3 years, he becomes king. He's been ruling for 5 years, he becomes king. And they do this and that, and they make an alliance with Assyria, and then they fight each other, and then Egypt comes up, and all this stuff goes. That's why I say it's political line.
And that's why it's confusing when you read it. It's very hard to distinguish when in this, the different kings and who's for how long. It's because there's two lines going on. Storylines going.
The other thing that's really confusing, there's just one part in First and Second Kings, I think it's in Second Kings, where the king of the north is named Jehoram. And the king of the south is named Jehoram. So now you go, okay. And you got to figure out, and one starts here, one starts here, you know, it's like that. So yes, there's challenges to Second and First Kings, First and Second Kings. First and Second oh yes.
It's as though God wanted you to really want Him enough to study. He didn't make it easy.
Right, it's not easy.
Salvation is easy, but He didn't make this easy.
You gotta want it, and the more you study it, the more you're just blown away. And it's now First and Second Chronicles is only about the southern kingdom. Okay, this is only about the southern kingdom because there is no spiritual life in the northern kingdom. There's not one. There's one borderline good king, but he does not take down the idols. He does not. So, yeah, we will get into that. Chronicles is only south. Yeah. So, because it's following a spiritual line, and only the south has a spiritual story. This is a side note, but there's about 21 kings in the northern kingdom in that little time frame. There's about 21 kings, or maybe 22 in the southern kingdom. In this time frame, from David to Jeremiah. And in the southern kingdom, there's only 7 good kings. So a third of them are good kings, and this is the better kingdom, and 2/3 are not. Okay? And why everything's happening the way it is the key is in Deuteronomy. Why this story plays out like it does is written in Deuteronomy. It's all prophesied in Deuteronomy. You can see the whole thing. They go, if you know the story and then you go back and read Deuteronomy, you go, oh my goodness. It's laid out right there. It said if we do this, that's going to happen. They did that and that happened. And it's laid out in detail in Deuteronomy. It's like, and Deuteronomy is amazing. The whole book is one day. And Moses is standing up on Mount Nebo, or real close to it, and he's looking at the congregation, and they're about to go into the promised land. And he goes, he's just blatantly loud. If you do this, that's going to happen. And then the next chapter he goes, and I'm going to remind you, if you do that, that's going to happen. He probably does that a dozen times. And they're all standing there, okay. And then he goes at the end, I know you're going to do that. So that's going to happen. Yeah. That's exactly, I read through Deuteronomy recently and I thought, wow, that is one book. Okay, now we get to, when we finish 2 Kings and 2 Chronicles, we're going to jump to Ezra. We skip our 400 years. Oh, wait a minute. We skip our 70 years. There's an exile. Excuse me, I'm losing my track. Right at the end of here, we go into exile.
What year then?
And that's 70 years. Okay? There's an exile time there. There's 7 years of exile right here. This is when everything that Moses said in Deuteronomy happened. And they get hauled away. That's when Nebuchadnezzar in Babylon comes in, destroys Jerusalem, destroys the temple, destroys everything, and takes them off into captivity. They stay in captivity for 70 years. And when they come back with Ezra. Actually, they come back with a guy named Zerubbabel. But his story is written in Ezra. So his story is written in Ezra. Ezra is a book that is written, that has, Ezra lives over here. He goes, I'm going to tell you what happened when Zerubbabel did it. So he jumps back 80 years. He tells Zerubbabel's story. And then he jumps forward and tells his story. So there's half of Ezra is back here, and half of Ezra is here. And in between those two is Esther. So you have Ezra, Nehemiah, and Esther. Esther is actually in another country. So I would put her probably black on down. Because she is not, she's a timeline, but she's in another, she's off in Persia. Have I helped her? Have I just confused everything? We'll go, I'm just trying to orient you. All right, so we are up through, we've gone through Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges, Ruth, 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles, Ezra, Nehemiah, Esther. Okay, Psalms. Psalms is about half written by David.
Where was Samuel?
Samuel is
I'm
right.
sorry, I missed it.
Me too.
1st and 2nd Samuel are right here.
Thank you,
in-
sorry.
In the area of David.
Okay.
Okay. We need a new color.
And Esther.
So we're going to put, Job is next. Job is, the Hebrew in Job is the oldest Hebrew in the Bible. So they figure it is the very first book ever written of the Bible. So, and this story, Genesis, isn't written until Moses, right? So even though that happens before this book, and they think it happened during these 40 years, 400 years. So we think Job, oh, that's not right. We think Job is right in here. While the Israelites are slaves in Egypt, they think Job is in here somewhere. Now they're not sure. Half the people think that Job could be around the Tower of Babel, before Abraham. But wherever he is, he's before Exodus. Okay, so he has to be after the flood and before Exodus. So that makes him the first book. So if you were reading in the Hebrew, that would be like reading ancient English, way back before you could even understand, and all the S's look like F's and things like that. So that's where Job is. David wrote most of the Psalms. So we could put Psalms here. Under David, we would put Proverbs right here. Whoops. Proverbs starts with a P, I don't know. And Ecclesiastes and Song of Solomon. They would go right about here. Okay, so now we've gone through Job, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Solomon. We are through our first 3 boxes of books, and we are ready for major prophets. Major prophets start with Isaiah. Isaiah is in here. Whoops. Goes like that. Excuse me, I can't write like this. So Isaiah goes there. Jeremiah is right here.
Isaiah goes in front.
Isaiah goes before Jeremiah. Lamentations happens with Jeremiah. Lamentations is Jeremiah standing probably on Mount Olives, out of battle range, looking over Jerusalem as Nebuchadnezzar destroys it, and he laments. That's what Lamentations is. I don't suggest letting young children read Lamentations. It is very graphic, and you wouldn't want them to read that. That's a section of the Bible you wouldn't want them to read. There's descriptions of what starvation does to people, and what people who are starving will do. And it's not something you want. So, no. In the children's ministry, Lamentations is not taught. So, that Lamentations goes right in here. Okay? The next one is Ezekiel. Ezekiel happens during the exile. Ezekiel is really neat because he is taken away into captivity. There are 3 groups taken away into captivity. He's taken away, and he's taken to Babylon somewhere, and while he's there, he gets this vision, and in this vision, it's like God transports him back to Jerusalem, and he gets to watch the glory leave the temple. And he describes what it is like to have God leave Jerusalem. And he described it's very emotional for him. And he goes, look, the glory lifted, and then it sat there. It's like God is so much not wanting to leave. So he's lifted off of the throne and hovered there for a while. And then the glory goes to the door and hovers there for a while. And then glory goes out of the tabernacle and onto the gate and hovers there for a while and has to leave. So he describes all that. It's very, very emotional. It's very dramatic. And the glory never returns. So this is at the exile. When these people return to the land, the glory does not return. When you get to the Gospels, and you read John 1:1, it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And you jump down to John 14, it said, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld His glory. The glory comes back from Ezekiel at Jesus. It's really a great picture of, if you follow the glory, it's another fun trail to follow the glory through here. It's really, really cool what happens with the glory. So, Ezekiel is right here. I don't know how to get him in here. Daniel is right here. Daniel's story spreads over 70 years, so to just put him in one spot is a little bit, but there's not room. So there's Daniel. All right, I got a few minutes, and we are now ready for minor prophets. Okay, y'all strapped in? So we have Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi. Take your minor prophet list and think of it like this. Think of it as the first 6, and then think of it as 3, and then think of it as 3. And there's your 12. Okay? The first 6 are going to go into this section of 1st and 2nd Kings. Okay? So they go into there. This next 3 are going to go into the section where, right here, after the northern kingdom is taken out and only the southern kingdom is left. Okay? The last 3 are right here with Ezra, Nehemiah, Esther. That help a little bit? Okay, so now when you get to these, you can divide them in half. And there are 3 for the northern kingdom, and 3 for the southern kingdom. And they're not listed in time order. So you would not say that Hosea is the first prophet. It's just the first one listed. Okay? However, there is one thing that I did notice. They go, of these first 6, they go like this. Hosea goes to the north. Joel goes to the south. Amos goes to the north. Obadiah goes to the south. Jonah goes to the north. And Micah goes to the south. So for me, that just gave me a little bit of clue. I open up and I'm reading Joel and I go north or south. And then I go through that list and I figure out at least who's he talking to. Of these 3 that go to the north, the 3 that go to the north are Hosea, let's see, Amos, I think, is that right?
Yes.
And Jonah, right?
Yes.
Okay, Jonah actually goes way north to Assyria because he goes to Nineveh. That's his point. Of course, he goes to Tarsus first, but that's, he goes to Tarshish and he goes and he does his, his swimming thing and the whale thing and all that. He has this big adventure and this, all that. So, but his job is to go out. So actually, they get 2 plus 1 missions type one. Does that make sense? Okay, let's do this one. Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, and Micah.
Wait.
Right?
Yes.
That's a Micah, excuse me.
Oh,
I
okay,
have
so
it
I
right.
was saying, okay.
Okay, so Joel and Micah actually go to the southern kingdom. Obadiah goes down and is to Edom. So they have a missionary too. So they have 2 in there and a missionary. Edom is this area just south of the Dead Sea. And that's going to belong to Esau. Esau was Jacob's twin brother, and so they are considered the closest relatives to the Israelites, are the Edomites. And they are also big enemies. Okay? So, but God sends Obadiah, well, at least Obadiah's information is for Edom. Okay? That helped me a little bit. Otherwise, I just have random big names that make no sense. So that helps me a little bit. The next 3, let's say Jonah, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk. It's hard to... Nahum, Habakkuk, Zephaniah. They go to the southern kingdom after Assyria has destroyed the northern kingdom. So the northern kingdom is wiped out. All we have left is Judah, Jerusalem, and its cities around there, and those three go there. They are for those people who are left.
So all three, Nahum, wait, I'm sorry, tell me again. Yeah.
Nahum, Habakkuk, Zephaniah are for
Okay.
the southern kingdom.
Oh, they are.
Yes, after Assyria has taken out the northern kingdom. And the last three are Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi. And they are prophets after they return from captivity. So they go down here. Does that help anybody, like, or are you just leaving more confused than before?
There's a little clarity in it.
Well, you know what I didn't do is I didn't give you all the dates, so.
Yeah, when we did the study in Psalm and he was on the journey in exile, that, it's this exile?
Mhm,
Okay.
mhm. That's one of these psalms that is back here with David that probably wasn't written by David, or at least that's a very strong opinion. And it would have happened back over here. Now, on the board, that looks like just a little bit, but we're talking 600 years,
Right.
500 years, yeah. Okay, so that's my introduction to the There's a whole lot more. I didn't even tell you where Isaiah was, and he's a main person. And our Elisha and Elijah and their main people, but we'll get into more of that. I probably overloaded your brain today. Next week, we are going to do Genesis. We're going to do the beginning. We're going to do the first covenant, the Abrahamic covenant, and why the story of redemption got started, how much we need redemption, what happened, and how this gets going. If you want to read Genesis 1 through 3, that would be a good. And if, as you're reading Genesis 1 through 3, how many you've read Genesis 1 through 3, right? Yeah. Before. You've read it a dozen times. You've read it 50 times. I probably read this 1,000 times. Every time you read it, there's something you didn't notice before. So find what you didn't notice, find what's new, and see what's there. One of the things that hit me, why didn't they eat from the tree of life before they left the garden? Why did they eat from it before here's the tree of knowledge of good and evil. The other one's sitting right there in the middle of the garden with it. Did they eat of that one? They might have. I don't know.
They had a sword.
Right. Okay, let's pray. Dear God, thank you for giving us the entire Old Testament. Thank you that there's a way to sort through it and decipher it and figure out your plan. Thank you that you have a plan, and that you put it there for a purpose. It's 3/4 of our Bible. It's there for a reason. You've got a big story to tell, and it's important for us to know. So help me to touch on that some as we go through these weeks. Help these ladies to understand. In Jesus' name, amen.